Moshe is an old Jew. He's working in the streets of Brooklyn, looking very upset and dejected. Suddenly, his friend Shlomo looks at him and greets him and asks, "Why do you look so sad, Moshe?" And Moshe says, "You will not believe what happened to me. I sent my son over to Israel to meet a nice Jewish girl, and he came back a Christian." Shlomo is saying, "I don't believe that you say that. Exactly the same thing happened to me. I also sent my son over to Israel to meet a nice Jewish girl, and he became a Christian. We have to do something about it." They decide to go together to the rabbi. Go to the rabbi, and they tell him, "Rabbi, we both sent our sons over to Israel, and they returned Christians." And the rabbi is saying, "That's absolutely unbelievable. Exactly the same thing happened to me. I also sent my son over to Israel, and he became a Christian. We have to do something about it." They decided that they will all pray to God and ask to tell him their unique story. And they're praying, and suddenly God appears in the middle of a synagogue, and they tell him, "God, you will not believe what happened to us. We all sent our sons over to Israel, and they returned a Christian." God says, "That's unbelievable. Exactly the same thing happened to me. I also sent my son over to Israel, and he became a Christian." My name is Shai Dotan, Associate Professor of International Public Law at the University of Copenhagen Faculty of Law. In this lecture, we will study how to use jokes in talks, lectures, speeches of all kinds. This is part of a series of lectures designed to improve your English. If you listen to my talk about telling anecdotes, you know that I'm influenced by the work of Lillian Wilder, an excellent teacher of public speaking. And she has a mantra: you always have to elicit a response, to get back a response. Why are jokes so unique? Because that's the only medium that we have to create an involuntary response, laughter, in the audience. If you tell something that is fascinating or interesting in other ways, you don't get such a clear visual and vocal cue from the audience as you get with a joke when you get some laughter back. So it's a perfect tool to make yourself loved and accepted by the audience because they respond to what you're doing by laughing, even if it's not unstoppable giggling, but it's some laugh is a good response, and that's very good. What should you be aware of when you're telling a joke? The first thing is, don't offend anybody. Now, today we take these things very seriously. You cannot offend anybody. It can be a sexual, gender, racial minority. These things are unacceptable and they can lead to a significant damage to somebody's career. So you have to be very, very aware of them and very, very careful. Now, I think the level of care differ across different places. I think that the US, the level of scrutiny that we have of people talking is much greater than what I've seen in universities in Europe or in Israel, where people can speak much more informally, and I don't think it will cause a damage. But in any case, you want, even if it's not for the sake of your career, but that's for the sake of not harming other people or making them feel bad, try not to offend anybody. You need to think also if you have some kind of some level of joke immunity. Now, my listeners know that I'm a proud Jew, a proud Israeli, and that's why most of the times I will tell jokes about rabbis and Jews and Israelis. That's exactly the kind of jokes that I can tell without anybody misinterpreting them, because it's about me and my people and my country. Joke immunity is not absolute, however. If I would tell a joke that would be very offensive to Jews, for example, presenting clear anti-Semitic characters, and many jokes like this, some of them are very, very funny, I would probably try not to do that in a room full of Danes, would be my students, for example, because maybe one of them is Jewish or has a relative who is Jew, and you feel offended even though I'm Jewish myself. So this is a joke that maybe it will be easier for me to tell it in Israel when I'm part of a community than in another area. So let's take this out of the question. I mean, if you're really trying not to offend anybody and you do it consciously, you will succeed. That's a good rule of thumb. If you really try not to offend anybody, I don't see any reason anybody will be offended. The problem is exactly when people try to offend and try to get away with it, and that's exactly where things get ugly. The second issue that you need to be very aware of is the joke has to be connected to the context. If it's not connected at all to the context, you just telling jokes, you are making a disservice for yourself. You're not a stand-up comedian. Your job is to be, maybe you are, I don't know, maybe some of my viewers are in this field, but most of my viewers, I assume, are supposed to give an academic lecture or a professional lecture. And in this lecture, it's very good if you make people laugh, but you can't just tell jokes that are not connected at all. At the same time, the connection may be very tenuous and very, very flexible, let's put it this way. Let me give you a few examples. It's easy to do with examples, I think. So I was once commenting on a book that was trying to explain that international law is actually focused not just on states, but also on individuals. It's a valid thesis, and the book was a great contribution to the literature. What I was trying to do is I'm trying to say how come that so many people miss that. So I told the following joke. A guy goes to a farmer that he knows, and the farmer very proudly shows him the farm, tells him about everything that is going on there. Then he starts to tell him that he has two cows, a white cow and a black cow. And he says, the white cow is amazing. She gives me 5 liters of milk every single day. The guy says, what about the black cow? The farmer says, she also does that. And then he says, but the white cow every single year gives me a healthy calf that I can use, and I'm very happy about that. Then the guy asks about the black cow. He says, oh, she also does that. And then he says, but the white cow, every time I come, she licks me, she loves me so much, she shows me such affection, almost like she's human. And the guy says, what about the black cow? And the farmer says, she also does that. And then the guy says, it's a bit strange for him. I mean, he says, you keep praising the white cow, she does this, she does that, and the black cow you never praise, you just say she also does that when they ask you. Why is that? And the farmer says, easy, it's because the white cow is mine. And the guy asks him, what about the black cow? She says, she's also mine. Now, this is a story that you can tell it doesn't offend anybody, it's making a point. It's making a point that there is some form of ingrained discrimination that we don't understand and we cannot understand. And that's something that you can use in many, many lectures to make a certain point. So let's take another example. I once wrote a review of an excellent book that was, I think, too much focused on something that the court says instead of the decisions that the court issues. And I started, even in writing the review, with a story about the king that goes hunting with his entourage, and suddenly one of the servants comes and screams, don't shoot me, I'm not a deer. And the king takes the gun, shoots him straight, and kills him. And everybody's saying to the king, why did you do that? He said he's not a deer. The king said, I thought he said, shoot me, I am a deer. Now, it's a nice point, because obviously when somebody is actually saying anything and you recognize these words, you know it's not a deer, it's a human being, so why do you shoot him? So that's a point that I was making that was a bit of a starting point. Or for example, if you have, that's an example that I didn't use before that in writing, but I think I mentioned in several lectures. If you want to deal with something like deception and how it works, you can tell the story about this time 2 Jewish merchants. I hope this is not too much offensive, but they meet somewhere on the Polish border, and the guy asks, are you going to Plonsk or are you going to Warsaw? And the merchant answers, I'm going to Warsaw. The other merchant starts to scream, aha, I know that you're actually going to Warsaw, and you're saying that you go to Warsaw because you want me to think that you're not going there, so why are you always lying? So you see, he said the truth, but the other side is so worried about deception that he views the truth as a lie. Okay. The key to all these jokes is, besides the fact that they need to be taught properly and in a way that engages the audience, communicative audience, that's hard to do. It's not easy to tell a joke well. They also need to match the context so that they can work. And if the match is not perfect, then the burden of telling the joke well, of connecting it, if not to the argument itself and to the room, goes higher. So you have to do either or. Either the joke is a perfect match to the argument that you're making, that nobody could doubt that, or it's a perfect joke, and then the connection can be quite tenuous, but if everybody laughed, you can always kind of connect it into the rhythm of a lecture. It's not easy to do. And that's why I think a lot of people are afraid to even try to say a joke. They don't want to fail. My philosophy is you try, and sometimes you will fail. It will be an embarrassment, but that's the only way to learn. And then you get it into your toolkit. And I think it's useful to have in your toolkit the ability to tell a joke. What happened if you did fail? So you did tell a joke that was not funny at all. Nobody in the room laughed. It's almost embarrassing. That's something that happens. And one way to resolve it is to do a double of nothing. Double or nothing means you are trying to tell another joke that then everybody is so uncomfortable in the situation that they already laugh. When I teach a course in Denmark, for example, and I tell a joke that doesn't work, I would maybe say something like, well, this joke worked in Israel and the weather was warmer there. And then some people laugh, and quite a few actually laugh. Sometimes they get my best laughs out of this double or nothing. So you can try to build onto the context. People are already expecting this laugh, and it comes naturally, and then it releases the tension in a way. So this is something that you want to have in your toolkit, the ability to save a day by giving an extra joke that you maybe didn't even plan to try to diffuse the situation. Alternatively, this doesn't work. You try to return to the same rhythm of a lecture from before, and I don't think anybody will view it against you. Even people that don't laugh, sometimes, and I notice this, sometimes they remember the joke and they even think about it positively and tell it to their friends, the colleagues, the other students. We heard this joke from this guy. So even if they didn't laugh at the moment, sometimes it's actually useful. Now, as you get better at telling jokes, and the only way to get better is to get experience. So as you tell more jokes, what you will do is you'll be able to tell the joke better. You'll be able to match it more to the context, and which is just as important, you will learn how to match it to the audience. So you will know which joke to tell in which context, to which audience, at which time, and in which way. And all these things will become better with time, and I really think it's a useful thing to try to do that, especially if you are, for example, a new beginning as a lecturer. Before you go to the most important conference presentation of your life and risk to tell a joke there, tell jokes to your students. I mean, I started to teach when I was very, very young as a teaching assistant, and I had plenty of time to practice my presentation skills with students. Even when I was in the army, I did that even much more when I was also younger, and I had to do it for hours and hours and hours. So that's exactly something that you want to practice. If you are in a situation like this, practice telling a joke. I want to say another thing. When you are a presenter, sometimes there are situations that cause an embarrassment without you planning that. The PowerPoint doesn't work. You came late to the lecture. It shouldn't happen, but it does happen sometimes. Knowing a few non-offensive jokes that can be matched to quite a wide set of contexts is something that can really save you this embarrassment. So if the PowerPoint doesn't work and you have a joke that seems perfectly matched and everybody is laughing because everybody is anxious and waiting, this can really save a day. So what I encourage you to do is collect jokes that you think are useful and build this reservoir and experiment with that and experience that as you teach. If you ask me how to find jokes, look, there are numerous books about the subject. You can find it on YouTube. On YouTube, you can even find people that tell these jokes very, very well, so you can learn also from a presentation. I strongly recommend that. And I know that there are experts on public speaking that are telling, avoid jokes. It's too dangerous. And my opinion is, it is dangerous, it is difficult, but if you experience enough telling jokes, you will get better. And then when you really need this joke, and there are situations like this can transform your career. You will be ready. You will have the right joke, you know how to match to the context, you understand your audience, and you will deliver it in the best possible way. So work on that and get this capacity to tell jokes well.